deck can absolutely overpower it, but there's not that much time. You got to get your shop in order real fast.
Fire Dragon Crusader is how things are going to start here for Dylan Murphy. We are underway here in round number 8. Dylan sitting here at 6-1, trying to go under his opponent before they do get set up. You see he's got a Dragon Mantle in his hand. Titan Strength as well. He's going to start just by attacking number 2. Let's make it through with the pump. So not the most impressive second turn of the game.
Surprising not to deploy the Dragon Mantle that turn, as you get a cantrip while the shields are down. Plus it's the same amount of damage this turn, but perhaps bigger plans.
Corsair is the draw there for Rianhard. And this is the problem creature, Sylvan Caryatid. Might not be blocking this turn, but the fact that it can accelerate to things is very scary.
It's really important, because if Cain is able to flip over Sidisi and get a couple tokens, that can be game over by itself.
Yep.
And the Sylvan Caryatid forces Dylan to tap out to advance his board rather than hold up a removal spell in response to the trigger.
There's a Frenzied Goblin. The little guy. Glad he's back.
A hard worker.
Looks like it might be time for Corsair, maybe. Cain slows down a little bit here. You can see his hand. He's got a Corsair, a couple of basics, because all of his basics look to be white bordered, helping us out here in the booth. As the top card is another white bordered basic. It's a Yucky Forest. I think that one's ugly.
I think that's 4th edition, most likely.
I think so. He's going to gain a life off of that. So this is where you come in. This is your power play right here. Those lands.
Basic lands.
Titan Strength to draw.
I think, is that a 6th edition forest?
Kicking it old school. You know, Ari Lax played white bordered basics in his Pro Tour deck that he won with. Not to tilt people. That's what I thought the initial reason was, because it's easier to, when you fetch, to search for a white bordered land.
That makes some sense.
Yeah, unfortunately, it does make sense. Frenzied Goblin, gonna come to the red zone here. Corsair is not allowed
Memories.
to block. Yeah, you've done this once or twice to some people.
I have indeed. Not with a creature enchantment on it, but close enough.
That's who the fop's going to be. It's going to be an Accruing Crusader. So back to Cain we're going to go. Elvish Mystic is the top card. He's got a lot of lands. I don't think a lot of action. I think maybe the only spell in his hand is Hornet Queen, and boy, are we a far way away from that. Opulent Palace is going to come to play tapped, of course. Rianhard going to go up another life and just pass the turn back. Murphy's going to untap. It's a draw. He's got to figure out when he wants to fire off these Titan Strengths. That's the big question.
It's tough with the mana up on the other side of the table.
This will be Dragon Mantle over here on the Crusader.
And the trigger happens regardless if there's a removal spell in response.
So there will be a hasty 1/1 soldier that's going to be joining the party here in just a moment. So long as Dylan does remember the trigger. I'd be surprised if he didn't. So there that is. The cantrip, of course, from the Dragon Mantle. We'll net Dylan a card. And everybody into the red zone. Here, Frenzied Goblin says, Corsair, you can't block.
And this is the way that the mono red deck kind of generates its own form of card advantage, which is I just have more spells. I have more action than you do.
Now, Murphy, you see the Stoke the Flames in his hand again. He's got those 2 copies of Titan Strength. So I do think it's interesting if he Titan Strengths here. What is he Titan Strengthing? And does he want to kill the Fire Dragon Crusader? Does he want to pump the Fire Dragon Crusader to kill the Caryatid? Does he want to do it to a token? Does he want to do it to the heroic creature?
I think you just do it to the heroic creature here.
I think the only one he won't be doing it on is Frenzied Goblin.
Yeah. You don't want that to get killed in response.
Yeah.
Even though it's unlikely, based on what's happened thus far, that Cain has some way to play over the top. But
looks like Titan Strength is going to be good to go. Again, Murphy's going to scry 1 here. A lot of damage is going to come across, though. You can tell this red deck really, really low to the ground and does a really nice job of swarming the opponent.
Yeah. And with Frenzied Goblin, you can ignore the 1 blocker. And that's an important part of this deck, you know. Most of the normal decks are going to try to stabilize against you by just cranking out Corsairs or Siege Rhinos or what have you, and anything that you can play to punch through that's really valuable.
Just cut the top card here from the Corsair. You see Rianhard is down to 7. There's a Swamp. He's going to go up to 8. Has a Mystic to deploy. But again, he's 1 mana away from Hornet Queen now. If he can get Hornet Queen out there, he may have a chance to win this one, but 7 mana is a whole lot.
There's still a burn element to this deck, too, unfortunately. 4 copies of Stoke the Flames, 2 Lightning Strikes.
Pass the turn back will Cain. So over to Murphy, we're going to go yet again. He's going to untap all these creatures. Again, another Titan Strength in the grip. He's got, I believe, 2 copies of Hammer Hand in hand as well.
And that could be the finisher here. I mean, he can just Hammer Hand up the Chrono Crusader, trigger on the Courser and the Elvish Mystic, and unless Cain has some incredible follow-up, that's going to be it.
Yeah, of course, when the center is battlefield, target creature can't block this turn. And that's actually what the red decks kind of do now better than anyone. They just say, that creature can't block, that creature can't block, force through more damage.
Yep.
It's not about burn spells as much as it maybe used to be in different standard formats.
Well, just the burnout for this deck is not as good as it used to be. That's a big part of it, too.
So those Hammer Hands are going to resolve. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1, too. We can't forget about the fact that it does give a creature haste as well. Hammer Hand is probably a pretty underranked card that looks way better than we think it is.
Well, all this deck is about trying to close out the game before things get overwhelming, and haste and making something unable to block and +1/+1 all work towards that end.
Now the extra mana will allow Dylan to, pump the Fire Crusader, activate the Drag Mantle, what have you. And what it is a win there for Mono Red Aggro up a game here over this Sidisi Whip deck. You think of a Sidisi Whip deck, you think of just the 2 cards in the name are really tough for a red deck to beat, but they didn't show up that time.
Well, Whip and Sidisi are both, they're good if other things are going on in the game the right way. If Dylan has to spend his mana deploying his own threats, developing his board, can't kill the Sidisi in response to the trigger, and the Sidisi flips over some creatures, that's great. And if Whip is able to enter play with a developed board, that's great too. But Whip would have done basically no work for Cain in that game. Would not have helped.
Sideboard time. We'll see if Cain actually does have help. Take a look at the sideboard here. 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Negate, 2 Doomweight Giant, 2 Drown in Sorrow, a Bow of Nylea, a Farika God of Affliction, a Bile Blight, a Reclamation Sage, an additional Soul of Innistrad, and Erebos God of Dead, and a Sultai Charm. So a lot of 2s and 1s here. But the short answer to the question is yes, he does.
A couple Doomweight Giants, a couple copies of Drown in Sorrow. Those are a good starting point. I think the Bile Blight is fine here too, and that will about do it.
Do you like the bow?
No.
The bow's so slow.
It's so slow, and this deck doesn't have much of a burn element. It's about developing a commanding board presence. Bow might be better if he has some really inefficient options in his deck. I could see bringing it in, but it's not a card I would be actively looking to put in. It would just be, if he had a ton of Thoughtseizes and a ton of anti-control cards in the deck, you can replace him with Bow, but I would not be actively looking to put it in.
What do we got on the sideboard for the red deck?
4 Searing Blood, 2 Lightning Strike, 4 Eidolon of the Great Revel, 3 Peak Eruption, 2 Magma Spray. So, nothing, basically.
Just send it back?
That's fine. Maybe he wants 2 Lightning Strikes, I don't know. But there's no reason to get too fancy here.
He didn't see a lot game 1.
Nope.
Think about it. He saw Courser, Caryatid, Murderous Cut, and Elvish Mystic and some lands.
Yep.
Might not, we don't know if Dylan sat next to Cain or, watched his feature match a little bit earlier when he was playing at Trevor Humphreys. You might not have any idea what Cain's up to.
Lightning Strike's really good against the DC.
Yes.
So that's if he is aware that that's going on in Cain's deck, bring in the extra Lightning Strikes. But he may not know that. He may not have that information.
Well, game number 2 is going to be underway here shortly. But we will talk very briefly about 2015 states and regionals. Regionals is something actually new that we haven't done before, but it's all going to take place on Pro Tour weekends.
Yeah, we're excited to fill out these programs finally. Because, the Pro Tour weekends, not that many people qualify for them. We thought it was a great opportunity to bring high-level organized play through our states and regionals programs. You see, we have spring and autumn. We actually just got done with autumn states a couple weekends ago. The next one coming up is our winter regionals, February 7th, 8th. Again, the easy way to remember these dates is they just occur on Pro Tour weekends. So state championships, of course, involve all the states. The regional championships, there's going to be fewer of them and kind of involve larger areas that they're trying to encompass. But open series points, prizes, playmats, medals, the whole 9 available at all these tournaments. So make sure to be checking these out if you are not qualified for the Pro Tour that weekend.
Well, we've seen a mono red deck win states just last weekend. Tom Ross got it done in Louisiana with a Boss Sly deck. So this isn't too much of a surprise to see a mono red deck have a great start here at 6-1 in the hands of Dylan Murphy.
Yeah, it's not surprising. It's a deck that's pretty easy to adapt to, I feel like, but if people are still messing around trying to win the Obzon mirror or whatever, it's going to be a long day if you play against mono red.
We kind of saw this right in the last center with Rebel Red, where every time we look at the sideboard, it's like, all right, you got those Drowning Sorrows, you got those Freakish Cures, and it's just like maybe one, maybe none. It's like if you don't respect it, it will run you over. And it's not the most powerful deck. Doesn't have Siege Rhinos and Elspeths and all these expensive cards. Hammer Hands and Frenzied Goblins, well, they still deal 20 damage.
Exactly. Powerful, not powerful, those things don't really matter. At the end, there's someone signing the match slip and with 2 wins and one person signing it with 1 or 0 next to their name. So.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how good your cards are if they're all in your hand when you die.
Now, of course, this deck, as you mentioned, if they are able to stabilize and turn the corner against mono red, there's really no coming back.
This deck is not able to recover. It's all in on trying to get these overwhelming starts in the first couple turns of the game. One Drown in Sorrow, that's going to be enough to beat this deck most of the time.
We're underway here in game number 2. It's a Temple of Malady there from Cain.
And it looks like Cain's hand does have a Drown Sorrow in it, so.
It's got that and a Courser. That's the 1-2 punch. There's a Foundry Tree Denizen.
Courser forces Dylan to add to the board, and the Drown Sorrow sweeps it all away.
Yeah, it's kind of the ultimate. Really, really tough for these red decks to beat. And there isn't a world, at least I don't think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, where you can kind of try to pace the game.
Nope.
If you're mono red aggro deck, it's like I'm all in every time, and I hope you don't have it. It in this case is Drown in Sorrow.
Your deck is creature enchantments and Foundry Street Denizens. Pacing the game doesn't usually work out that well for you.
Drown in Sorrow, is going to get 3 creatures. Scry's going to go to the bottom there for Rianhard. And now Murphy, all I can do is pass the turn back, and this is not the place that Dylan wants to be. Here's a Courser, top card. It's a copy of Sidisi. Nopium Palace is going to gain Cain a life. He's going to go up to 28. Excuse me, he's going to go up to 18. 28 would be way too much for the red deck to beat.
I believe his hand is 2 Titan Strengths, a Stoke, and at least 1 Hammer hand or some. It's a hand that would not beat a draft deck.
It's a little backwards. It's a little backwards. Here's Sidisi. And look, we know it's going to hit a creature. Thanks, Courser. So a zombie's going to be coming now, too. Big fan of this card. Eventually, this thing is going to have its time in the sun. I know that Brad Nelson, Todd Anderson, they tried the opening weekend. And, Brad went 8-2.
Yeah,
with the deck. Their take on Sultai, but this is going to be a thing. There's a Searing Blood.
Boom.
Get that zombie out of here. Dylan draws a mountain. This allows him to cast Stoke the Flames on the Sidisi, but this isn't the way that he wants to be using his cards.
Yeah, especially when his leftovers are 2 copies of Titan Strength and a Hammer hand.
And he's going to take care of the Sidisi now before it does get to attack. You see Cain's hand. He's going to start by attacking for 2. He's got a Courser on top of his deck. He's also got a Doomwake Giant in the grip. Here's a backup Courser. There's a land. Now he's going to go up to 18. And unfortunately for the mono red deck, I don't know if there's a string of draws.
There is not. Dylan could stack his deck, he'd still lose.
Yeah. And that's what makes it really tough for this particular version of red, where it's all about, getting on the board, swarming with creatures. Drown in Sorrow just says, well, I'm going to eat you for breakfast.
Here's the thing. It sort of feels like it's sort of this EV calculation. You're assuming game 1 you're beating most decks because they're not prepared to beat you. And then is your opponent drawing one of their 2 copies of Drown in Sorrow both games 2 and 3 on time? Probably not. So games like this look really bad, but you're still going to often win the match.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, right, this mono red deck, the games where it loses, it looks embarrassing. Oh, look at you with your 5 mountains over there. What do you got in your hands? Titan Strength? Though I do admire the no concede here by Dylan.
Well, there's no, just see, with the Courser in play, it's whatever.
Get some info.
Might see something that's relevant.
Take some lumps from Doomwake Giant and friends. That's exactly what he does. So Cain Rianhard is going to win game number 2. And in just a moment, we're going to be going to game number 3. Again, Cain's draw was against Trevor Humphreys. Trevor playing the Jeskai aggro deck. When players were not able to finish, it was a pretty close game. So still hasn't lost with the Sidisi whip deck yet.
So this is the spot where I'm talking about it as the EV calculation. If I'm Dylan Seat, I'm thinking I'm going to be on the play, and this guy needs to draw perfect again to win this match.
Yeah, nothing changes.
Yeah, nothing changes.
From like what you're trying to accomplish or how you're going to sideboard. Maybe 1 or 2 cards come out, I suppose. But your plan for playing the games is, look, I'm shoving. I'm playing everything.
Maybe Eidolon, the Great Revel, becomes more attractive on the play than on the draw.
Okay.
Probably get 1 or maybe 2 triggers out of it.
Okay.
On the draw, that card's pretty bad, I feel like. But maybe the extra lightning strikes come in because of the Sidisi.
I'm fine with that, too.
But it's not going to be heavy sideboarding in any event.
And I don't think there's a world where, I'm gonna pace the game. I'll just play one threat.
Nope. You lose to other things doing it that way.
Yep.
You just lose to heroes, downfalls, and coursers if you take too long. You just got to push. Bank on the fact that, this opponent of yours, they probably got 2 Drowning Sorrows, 2 Doomweight Giants, and if they don't have them or don't have them on time, they're going to lose.
That's the big plan.
When you're playing aggressive decks, for the most part, you have to say, there's an element to this person's deck I'm conceding to. You can't beat everything. You had to be playing a deck like Affinity back in the day that was so powerful
that you could just beat that
you could
stuff.
beat everything.
Yeah.
You could beat all the hate cards. In last year's standard format, I always said, you know what, I'm going to choose to lose the Supreme Verdict, and I'm going to try to beat everything else. Because the other stuff in their deck, Detention Spheres, Elspeths, Jaces, those could beat you too. It wasn't like it was Supreme Verdict or bust. They could beat you in a fair game. So my way of approaching the matchup was say, they had to have Supreme Verdict on turn 4. And most of the time, they're not going to be able to do that. But if I mess around for too long, I'm going to lose to just Detention Sphere and Jason to Elspeth.
And the thing is, right, is if they have Supreme Verdict on turn 4, good beats, you win.
Yep.
That's just kind of how it goes. You have to choose what card I think you're willing to lose to.
Exactly. And with this deck, you are choosing to lose to Drowning Sorrow. That is the
Anger
way
the
it
gods
is.
and a couple of other cards out there, too.
Yep.
For sure. I definitely agree with you. It kind of actually makes this deck a little bit compelling. You talk about Supreme Verdict. We don't have 4-mana Wraths anymore. We have Conditional Wrath sitting at 3 mana, and the real Wraths begin at 5 mana. So that actually might be what makes the mono red aggro deck a little bit more appealing, is that I don't have to worry about a deck that has a 4-mana Wrath.
It matters a lot.
Yeah. That might actually be a strong point in its favor as an option moving forward. The power level of the deck, again, is relatively low, but still gets the job done.
Well, there's a lot of really bad cards in it. So if you're talking about power level in that sense, I agree. It's the lowest power level of any deck in the format, but power level is not necessarily what determines wins and losses.
If it did, the $1 Million Man would have been the best deck.
It would have been, well, I'm not even sure if that's true.
Oh, the $1 Million Man. Google that one if you don't know about it.
Ooh. Well, you had to go through a lot of hits that will probably bring up former professional wrestler Ted DiBiase.
Yeah.
Before you get to Saul Malka's 2002 regionals deck.
But hey, I wouldn't mind going through some Ted DiBiase Wikipedia.
Oh, for sure.
That's fine. He's got a great laugh.
Does have a great
And
laugh.
a great theme song.
Great theme song. Great finishing move.
True. It's all win there. Actually,
Great gimmick.
Yeah. You don't even look for the deck anymore.
Though there is an issue that over time his gimmick will become less cool because of inflation. Like 60 years from now, $1 million might just be what the average person makes in a given year, and it'll be way less sweet. Because in modern times, the $45,000 man would not be a very good nickname. And eventually the $1 million man becomes that.
He'll work his way towards the billion and trillion dollar man.
Yeah.
They'll just have to keep updating the gimmick with the times. That's all. It's not too tough to do. Just change the first letter. It's simple. From million to billion. Boom, new gimmick.
Yep. I'm just waiting for the time where my grandkids are like, so was $1 million ever a lot of money? Because the $1 million man doesn't make much sense if that was never that much money.
I promise it was. Dylan going to keep very quickly. Oh, the Swift Spear into the red zone for 1. Rianhard going to draw a card. He draws a copy of Courser. There's a force, no mana acceleration.
I don't think he has Drowning Sorrow.
I don't think he does
He has
either.
Doomweight Giant, but on the draw, no mana acceleration, forget it.
Yeah, 5 mana's a lot. There's a Swift Spear. Is this
Boom.
a spell? Yep. Dragon Mantle, pump them both up. Cantrip.
Made some Goblin Guides.
Yep. Get after you. This is an attack for 4. Rianhard's already down to 15. Hasn't even played a second land yet.
And there is likely more to come.
They didn't get a great look at the draw. Polluted Delta puts Cain down to 14. There's a basic swamp.
I think he might have drawn a black card, and if it's Drowning Sorrow, that's a big deal.
That's a good black card to draw.
Though, if there's any card that gives Dylan a chance to really fight against Drowning Sorrow, it's Monastery Swift Spear. He can hold an instant in his hand and protect it.
There is the Drowning Sorrow. You can see it.
I also do not even know if he has another black mana in his hand.
Yeah. I don't even know if he has a third land.
Oh, there's a lot of trouble here.
Okay. There's a Death Dealer. There's a Mountain.
So he has 2 Hammer Hands, and Hammer Hand's actually great too, because he can turn these Swift Spears into 2/3s permanently, and now Drowning Sorrow doesn't even do anything.
Kind of crazy to even think about. Some resiliency against Drowning Sorrow for a red deck.
With these, how do we put it? Not that attractive of an option.
I would call them a motley crew.
So this is I love this play from Dylan here.
Okay.
He's just going ahead and playing the one hammer hand to leave the other one as backup. If Cain wants to untap and cast Drown in Sorrow on this board, that's fine. He loses the Death Dealer, and Dylan's only down one of the Swift Spears. And if Cain follows up with another blocker, well, forget about it, because the Coordinated Assault or the Arena Athlete plus the hammer hand in hand covers that too.
The draw for Cain was not a good one. It was a copy of Hornet Queen.
That is pretty efficient.
That is expensive in its nature. And he has no third land. So now Dylan will draw. Foundry Retreat Denizen is what he's found.
But I don't even think it really matters that much. Even if Cain had a blocker or Drown Sorrow last turn, I don't think it would have even mattered.
I'm not sure if he wins the game, yeah. There's the Denizen. Yeah, he can hammer hand that because it gives haste. You can't block. Trigger prowess. Yeah, he's taking a look at hammer hand. Not the first guy who's done that against Dylan, I imagine. It's got a lot of text. It does a lot of things. Creature can't block. A little bit of haste action. Pump up the jam with the Dragon Mantle. And just like that, Dylan Murphy is going to win this match over Cain Rianhard. He's 7-1 here with Mono Red.
Very, very impressive stuff. Very well done by Dylan there. His draw could have beat Drown in Sorrow. And it was the Swift Spears plus the Hammerhand.
That's actually really telling, right? If his draw can be Drown in Sorrow, then there might be some merit to this deck because Anger of the Gods it's kind of popular, but Drown in Sorrow's uptick in popularity I think is going to happen because of Abzan midrange.